No.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Disruption Live. I'm your host. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creative Disruption Live. I'm your host, Lakeisha Womack, and on this election day, we're gathering to celebrate not just a book, but a movement.
And the internet decided to freeze.
That voice and participation are sacred, and so is creativity. This conversation brings together national thought leaders who are transforming our world through art, faith, and innovation. And we're honored to have with us an extraordinary panel of faith leaders, artists, entrepreneurs, and storytellers. Each visionary is living out the 5 pillars of creative disruption: belonging, bold imagination, resilience, stewardship, and cultural reach. Before we dive in, let's meet our creative disruption thought leaders.
Our host for today's Creative Disruption Live is none other than Reverend Lakeisha Womack. She's the architect of innovation, the strategist for spiritual enterprise, and the visionary behind Rethinking Church, founder of Womack Consulting Group, who brings intellect, heart, and serious boss energy to every room she enters. Show your love for Lakeisha Womack. Our distinguished panelists. First up, a powerhouse of faith and innovation, CEO of the 224 Ecospace and the Conference of Churches, he's reimagining how spirituality, entrepreneurship, and wellness unite to transform communities. A visionary pastor, master chef of the soul, and creative disruptor of the highest order. Make some noise for the incomparable Reverend F. Lydell Brown. Next, a creative genius who builds empires where faith and technology collide. Founder and CEO of The Exchange, he's transforming how churches, creatives, and entrepreneurs connect and thrive in the digital age. An innovator, futurist, producer, and spiritual strategist. Give it up for the unstoppable J. Richard Bird. She turns peace into power and compassion into a movement. Founder of the Connecticut Center for Nonviolence, she's trained thousands in Dr. King's legacy, fusing art, activism, and love to heal communities. An artist, educator, and living force of creative compassion. Put your hearts together for Victoria Kriskow. She's the voice whisperer, the brand architect, the spiritual strategist behind world-changing leaders. Founder of J. Dorian Agency, she teaches artists and executives to own the stage with authenticity and soul. A designer, coach, and cultural disruptor, redefining what leadership looks like. Bring the energy up for Jill Jackson Jenkins. She's the pastor who turned her church into a living canvas. At First Congregational Church of Norwalk, she fuses faith, art, and civic life, transforming public spaces into sacred places. A visionary leader with heart, brilliance, and holy imagination. Please welcome Reverend Tamra Moreland. From Ferguson to Hartford, he's been on the front lines for love and justice. Pastor of Amistad Church and co-founder of Moral Monday, Connecticut, this movement builder uses faith as fuel for freedom and music as medicine for the soul. Get ready for prophetic fire. It's Bishop John Selders. He's the griot, the storyteller, the keeper of our collective memory. For more than 3 decades, he's ignited imaginations and inspired generations through story, rhythm, and truth. An artist, cultural guardian, and master of narrative power, raise your voices for Andre Cat. And the visionary who sparked a global movement, artist, minister, and author of Creative Disruption: How Artists and Innovators Build Influence, Drive Change, and Shape the Future. She's redefining leadership with faith, art, and fearless imagination. The heartbeat of this movement. Please welcome Reverend Dr. Shelley Best, the Creative Disruptor. Let's give a roaring welcome to our panel.
Wow. I don't know about you all, but I am so excited for today's conversation. And now that you've met our powerful panel, it's time to hear from the creative disruptor herself, the visionary behind this movement. Please welcome the author of Creative Disruption, Reverend Dr. Shelley D. Best. Welcome, Dr. Best.
Good afternoon and happy Election Day. I'm so glad that each of you are here with us as we gather for this important time together. Across the country, people are heading to the polls to make their voices heard, to cast their votes, and to make choices to participate in shaping what comes next. And as I reflect on this moment, I'm reminded that democracy and creativity share the same roots. Both are built on voice, choice, and participation. Both depend on people believing their contribution matters. Because when we silence citizens, democracy dies. When we silence artists, imagination dies. And imagination is how we heal as a people. Because imagination lets us see beyond the headlines, beyond the fear, beyond division, into what could be. And right now, we need imagination more than ever. So, why this thing called creative disruption? Creative disruption is about harnessing the power of imagination to rebuild systems that have forgotten how to feel. It's the art of telling the truth in love and doing it so creatively that it opens new possibilities rather than closing doors. Creative disruption is what happens when artists and activists and philanthropists join hands and say, we're not going to resist what's broken, we're going to reimagine what can be healed. It's not destruction, it's creation with courage. And it's needed right now because both democracy and community are asking the same question: who do we want to become? Who are we trying to be? Oh, don't you know there's a power in imagination and creativity? Creativity is not a luxury. It's a public good. It's what helps a nation dream itself forward. Every social movement began as an act of imagination, someone picturing justice when they had known only injustice. Everyone re-envisions belonging where there had only been exclusion. So when an artist paints, when a poet speaks, when a community organizer imagines a new system, that's democracy at work. Because democracy is not just about votes, it's about voices. And imagination gives those voices shape, texture, and hope. See, there's a cost of creativity. I've learned this truth not just as a theory, but through experience. A couple of years ago, I was at the role of being a pastor at Redeemer's Amy Zion Church in Plainville, Connecticut, and I made what I thought was a simple decision to affirm a transgender person's leadership in ministry. It was an act of love. It was the best person for the job. It was an act of conscience and imagination, believing that the gospel of belonging truly meant everyone. I had been studying love and I thought everyone was included in plain, simple love. But don't you know that choice cost me the pulpit? But what I lost in position, I gained in purpose. That was my first creative disruption that year. It taught me that leadership is not just about comfort, it's about courage. I carried that courage into the arts world, believing that creativity could heal communities as faith heals souls. But I began to see how the 55-year-old philanthropic organization meant to fund artists was quietly consuming their potential. So I wrote a 38-page case study on the Greater Hartford Arts Council documenting 55 years of a system that took away far more than it gave away. And I shared that report with the top funders of the organization, including the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, City of Hartford, and Travelers Foundation. And to their credit, with humility and boldness, Hartford Foundation for Public Giving listened. They issued $6 million in arts appreciation and repair grants directly to arts organizations across Greater Hartford, including a $1 million investment in the 224 EcoSpace and the Artists of Color Accelerate program, which I had founded. That was proof that creative disruption works, that imagination backed by truth and love can literally shift how money flows, how systems operate, and how artists thrive. So, what's at stake right now? We're living in a time when people are starting to lose faith, not just in government or institutions, but people are starting to lose faith in each other. Polarization has replaced dialogue. Fear has replaced imagination. But here's the danger. When people can't imagine a better future, they stop participating in creating one. That's why this movement, creative disruption, matters, because it invites people back into imagination as a civic act. See, we need artists who remind us who we are. We need innovators who design systems where everyone belongs. We need philanthropists who repair what is broken instead of preserving what is comfortable. And we need all of us, every citizen, every creative, every voter to remember that imagination is democracy in motion. See, there is power in creativity. There is healing in creativity. And art heals because it reconnects us to our shared humanity. And we've got to remember our humanity. See, a mural can tell a story that policy can't. A song can unite where speeches might divide. A dance can express grief when words fail. That's why creative disruption is a healing practice, not just a model of leadership. It's about belonging deeply, rising boldly, thriving fully. It's more than just a leadership model, it's about disrupting to create. Because when we nurture imagination and creativity, we nurture democracy. When we invest in creativity, we invest in community. So, why now? Right now, we're at an inflection point socially, spiritually, economically. Old systems are cracking and new ones are trying to be born. And in those moments of uncertainty, we have two choices: to cling to what we know and how it's always been, or to imagine what could be. So, this book, Creative Disruption: How Artists and Innovators Build Influence, Drive Change, and Shape the Future, is my invitation to imagine a world where artists are recognized as architects of democracy, where philanthropy becomes repair, not just charity, where communities thrive through creativity, not conformity. So on this election day, I'm asking you to do more than vote. I'm asking you to reclaim your creative power. So buy the book, share it with friends, write a review. We need your help to spread this movement around the world, and sponsor creative disruption in your community, where we gather artists and activists and funders, and we talk about issues that matter most where you live, that we can dream together and then create something, an event, an artwork, a new partnership that makes belonging visible, because the future of democracy depends on it. See, every disruption we face, and every disruption I face, from the pulpit to the boardroom, has taught me one thing: courage and imagination always walk hand in hand. And when we dare to imagine, we create spaces for others to belong. When we create, we heal. And when we heal, democracy itself is renewed. So as we move forward as citizens, as artists, and as dreamers, may we remember imagination is sacred. Creativity is power, and disruption, when guided by love, is the beginning of creation. So I call you each: join in the movement, belong deeply, rise boldly, thrive fully, and disrupt to create. That is our call, and so it is.
Wow, that was amazing. And thank you so much, Dr. Best. What a powerful reminder that imagination itself is a form of democracy, but it can also be a form of healing and hope. So I'm so excited to meet the guests that you've assembled today to explore those five pillars. First, we have belonging. We're going to bring up Reverend Brown, Reverend Moreland, and Victoria. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, afternoon.
Yeah.
Right. It's morning somewhere in the world,
No,
right?
just follow suit, right?
Right. So our first pillar is belonging, the heartbeat of creative disruption. It's how we build spaces where everyone feels seen, valued, and connected. Reverend Brown, you've led communities both in person and online. What have you learned about belonging in the digital era, and how do you create sacred connection across that distance?
Sure. Well, I think I go back to my organizing days, whereas my whole premise for doing the work that I was doing was to give us access. And so with that being said today, it's about giving people access so that they can feel a part of the process. I once had a really good friend that used to have this saying that sometimes the only difference between giving up and going on is a little bit of encouragement. And I think that's what the world is really missing. Just that little bit of encouragement, that open door, that smile, that word that says, I'm with you. You belong.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Reverend Moreland, your ministry thrives in public spaces from arts festivals to farmers markets. How do you see community life as a sacred practice?
Hmm. Well, I think back to Maslow, who wrote The Hierarchy of Needs, how people
Mm,
are motivated. And so belonging is really at the bottom of his pillar. And so it is important for people to have a sense of belonging to do anything. So whether you're a member of a church, you belong to a family, you belong to a civic organization, you belong to a church, and then we belong to the broader society. And so one of the things that was important to me is that we often hear people in church say, are you going to come to my church? Will you come and visit? Or they're not members of our church. And so I help to reframe things, for example, through our farmers market. We have about 500 people that come Saturday morning. And if we get 2 or 3 to come into the church, we're lucky. But I shared with people that they're close to us. They're part of our community. And the fact that they are here, they are on our ground, therefore they belong. And so we started to do more, and we just started doing cooking classes and giving away food to people in the community. And that's when I really got a lot of support to prepare food that the farmers would give us at the end to give to our seniors and other people who don't have a sense of belonging. So that was one of our major steps. And then Earth Day. We initiated Earth Day about 3 years ago with a couple of other churches. And we had maybe 50 to 60 people the first time. Now we've got the city on board, and we have about 1,500 to 2,000 people now coming to. And now I'm getting my members to come outside of the doors and to participate in the community. So that's a part of belonging to something greater than ourselves.
I love that. And I hope more churches are listening that belonging is not just coming in, but us actually going out. How powerful.
Right.
Victoria,
Right.
through your work in nonviolence, how have you seen belonging grow between people who once felt divided? And what role does compassion play in that process?
Well, I will say that Dr. Martin Luther King told us that at the center of nonviolence stands the principle of love. And in the center of compassion, we're fueled by love. Right? The concept that the knowledge, the knowing that all human beings have a right to be here. That although there seems to be so much that divides us in terms of our ideologies, in terms of perhaps race, in terms of our thoughts, our age, our gender, what we see again and again in this deep work of Kingian nonviolence is that we see that we have more in common than we have apart, really, that all people seem to be concerned about being loved by a special few. And this is work that's gone on in prisons, in universities, from people formerly incarcerated, from people currently incarcerated, from heads of government officials, superintendents of schools, students. We work in schools, we work in urban centers. And again, we see that people really want the same things. Also, one of the greatest desires is to learn and gain knowledge. Like that's a human value that comes up, or a desire again and again. So belonging, I think, it's at the heart of the work that we do. And also, one of our themes, one of our principles of nonviolence is that nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. And as Reverend Best was talking about, what courage it takes right now at this time, and today being our voting day, and today being such a critical time in our democracy, when we have this courage, it is a disruptor. It's a creative opportunity, and nonviolence is one of the strongest when we determine that status quo is no longer going to work for us. That although we see a world filled with fear, we have the courage to put love in front of that fear and to work towards togetherness rather than further separation. I think that it's tremendous to be here today with others along these lines and to support Reverend Best's exceptional work, and to also know that we are here, are deeply committed to humanity.
I love that. And I love that you highlight that Dr. King said more than I have a dream. I wish that we would all dig more into his writings and his work, because he also advocated for economic justice. That's a whole other subject that we'll save for another live. But there are so many great nuggets shared by you all, and I hope that our listeners are taking notes for opportunities that you all can use to engage in some creative disruption, because belonging reminds us that connection is the starting point of change. From that foundation, imagination begins to take flight. So now we're going to move on to our next pillar. So we're going to invite our next group of guests to the stage. And let me find Richard, and we have Jill and Andre coming to the stage. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Awesome. So our next pillar, bold imagination, is seeing what doesn't yet exist and having the courage to create it. Richard, you're amazing, and you've built multimedia ministries and mega church systems nationwide. What role does imagination play in your approach to innovation and faith?
Well, first, glad to be here. I've always believed that imagination is the first language of faith. Before there was light, there was a vision, and that vision had to be spoken into existence. So when I build, I'm not just thinking about strategy or technology. I'm asking, what does heaven look like expressed through this particular project? What does belonging sound like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What story are we telling the people that they can actually see themselves in? And so when you look at the church as being the original innovation lab, stained glass was immersive media before we had LED screens. Wow. Music and lighting and storytelling were all tools just to move people, imitating and start imitating. So imagination is so central to what I do, because faith gives me permission to see what's visible. And imagination helps me build what hasn't been built yet. One of the first things I do when I walk into a company, I walk with a program or a project, I ask the question, what would this look like if there were no obstacles? If money wasn't an issue, if people weren't an issue, what would it look like? That piece in imagination, then we can build the infrastructure and pieces to get there.
Wow, I love that. And I love thinking about, God as the original innovator. And if we're made in God's image, then who are we not to innovate? But again, that's a story for another podcast. Jill, you help people find their authentic voice on the world stage. How does imagination unlock courage?
Thank you, Lakeisha. And Dr. Best, thank you for including me on this very important discussion. I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be amongst all these distinguished voices talking about creative disruption today. So I believe imagination is how we find our way back to who we really are. Every one of us is shaped by rules and expectations and old conditioning that told us or how we should live. And sometimes all of that noise drowns out our true inner voice. Imagination gives us a way through all of that. It's the space where we can see beyond limits that are built by our fears. Imagination lets us picture something better, something more honest and for ourselves and for the people we lead. Now, courage is born in the moment. It's just a small glimpse. Because once you've seen what's possible, it's hard to go back to pretending you haven't seen it, right? And then there's truth. Truth is what follows when you honor that vision. It's when your actions start to match who you truly are. And that's what people feel, not your perfection, but your presence. So when I work with leaders and speakers, I remind them that their real power isn't in performance, it's in alignment. And when they connect with their own imagination, they find the courage to lead with heart again and truth. And those are not, it doesn't do it as lofty ideas, but it's a living expression of freedom. It's how we remember who we are beneath the conditioning and how we begin to lead, not from fear, but from authenticity.
Wow. I love that. And I love following a leader with imagination who dares not only themselves, but also because that's how innovation happens. So thank you so much for those words of encouragement. Andre, your storytelling has inspired generations of children. How does storytelling help young people imagine themselves as change makers?
Well, first of all, we talk about imagination. And I'm glad that people have talked about imagination a lot today, in particular because it's once that leader, that teacher, and they make it a safe place for them to use their imagination, a safe place for them to think about all the possibilities of what they can and cannot do in this world. And it is that space that we make where they feel that's a fertile space where magic is created. And once kids, people, individuals realize that, okay, this is where the magic is made right here, then you become fearless, because what is magic? It's where you can do the impossible. And so I'm opened up at that particular time to be able to imagine, to believe, to have the courage to say the different things that I want to do. Now, a lot of times with storytelling, we might be in our own mortal selves shy, afraid, and have all those frailties in our minds. But because we've created that space of imagination, that fertile space, then we have courage that's there as well, because hey, there's nothing stopping me except for my own imagination. So I'm going to have courage to do whatever it is that I think comes in really well. And a lot of times for me in particular, as a Black male going into different schools, libraries, and museums, and I run across another little Black child that has seen a lot of programming in front of them that tells them completely the opposite. Then they see this guy coming in and opening up the realms of freedom for them, and they are released. They're able to say, hey, this guy is doing it, I can do it too. And also when there's fear about doing something themselves, children see other kids modeled in stories and they become their heroes because they're the same age as them. So that means that I can do it if they can do it. But that fear is sometimes taken away because they might be afraid to do something, but a character in the story that's the same age as them can do it, then that is transferred over to them. And so all I'm talking about is making space for imagination.
Oh my goodness, I love that oppression, just from all the rules and boundaries that we've placed on them, that I think that allowing them to exercise their imagination will truly help us to usher in a new generation of liberated humans. So I love the work that you're doing.
When they see me come in, they see that I'm free.
Yes.
Be free as well, and they look at me like, you're really kind of crazy, aren't you? I'm like, yeah. I'm willing to make a fool out of myself so that you can get this too. You can be human, you can have humbleness and have humility, and just put yourself on a level where you're not afraid to be silly, you're not afraid to be courageous, you're just not afraid.
Yes. And to take a chance, right? So I love that. Thank you not only shows up in storytelling and where we represent, but also in technology and in leadership. Imagination is everywhere around us, and we should embrace that bold imagination because it is the birthplace of every transformation and the bridge to the world that we want to see. So thank you all so much, and you'll be back in just a moment. But for now, we're going to move on to our third pillar, which is resilience. So I'm going to pop you all off, and then we're going to move to we have Victoria coming back. Welcome back. Reverend Moreland coming back. And this time we're going to give Reverend Best a chance to share a couple of words if she wants. But with resilience, it is how we rise again and how creativity transforms struggle into strength. So starting with you, Victoria, in your decades of teaching nonviolence, what practices have helped you to stay grounded when the work feels heavy?
Wonderful question, because we all know what that we're in this work. We go through some very heavy times. The work itself, certainly, without a question of a doubt, the arts have been a pillar for me in terms of music. Music is such a powerful way to soothe that soul and to work out some of the dust of this everyday life. Right. Our teacher, my mentor, civil rights legend, Dr. Bernard Lafayette, who I work with a lot, even now today, he said that music was the blood that ran through the body of the movement. And I see that in the movement itself, in our famous civil rights movement here in the United States, which we are still in, and it's grave, and we have to keep fighting so hard with this consistent imagination, with this consistent creativity. Music is still essential, and you do see it. I look to see what happened when Kendrick Lamar really threw America into a new conversation. First, it should have been for some a new conversation, for others, yes, sir. With that act that he took and his statements that he made during the Super Bowl, right? And so this music helps me endlessly to be resilient. I sing all the time, and people that I work with will just break into song, and that just helps us get through that day. And Shelley can speak to that also. Apart from that, also, drawing is really a powerful tool, and I've over the last 8 years have been developing mandalas that are not the concept that we are all one, that we are in a circle, that we're interconnected, and that everything we do in life touches something else in life, and that you can't, I am not who I am until you are who you are supposed to be, is what Dr. said. So we live by that. So I've been drawing mandalas, and it's really helped to fortify me. I can sit and draw a mandala and then just get up and go back to it and feel revived. So art is a tool for me for sure. Thank you for asking.
Of course, I love that. I love that. Mm-hmm. Reverend Moreland, at a time when so many churches are struggling with what to do, how have your community initiatives helped your congregation to rebuild and adapt through these changing times?
So I think it also starts with the leader, right? And so one of the things that I have spent a lot of time on is being clear about my why, right? So Mark Twain years ago said that the two most important days of a person's life is the day that they're born and then the day they find out why. And then I think we went to the TED Talks and Simon Sinek started talking about the why. But the why is so important because it fuels you. And if you're a leader who is not fueled, if you're a leader who's not focused, if you're a leader who's not free, I feel like I'm preaching, I got the F's, right? You can't inspire anyone else. So my why is to be a bearer of hope and healing, right? And so then to help others in their why, and I believe, as you talked about, God being the greatest innovator and the most imaginative person who spoke things into being, is that I try to do that through my sermons and through my interaction. I try to help members see that your faith life and your faith practices bring about resilience in your life. It's not about anybody. That's one way of being resistant, because we've been taught it has to be this way and you have to call God this. We have kind of gone above that, right? However you define God for you, that's how you define God. We're going on a journey, right? Also helping my community to embrace rest as resilience.
Yes.
We are people who work all the time, right? How do you take time for yourself to spend time with you, and then what you bring to others? And then the other thing is connection with others. We need a community of believers, right? In scripture, really, we talk about the body of Christ. Well, our communities are a body. And so he talks about how can the arm say, I have no need of the other arm, right? We need all of these pieces and facets to function well together. And so I think that's really how I've tried to work within my community, to build resistance inside so that when we go outside, right, we have something to share, but more importantly than sharing it, we embody it.
And Dr. Bess, just for a moment, you spoke in your opening about some of the situations that you've had to go through. What did you draw from to remain resilient during those times and not to just give up?
I'm glad to have been asked this question, because when it comes to my ministry journey, it really has required me to be resilient in many ways, because I've always had a commitment to the least of these people without resources, people often without hope, or who have been wounded by life and trauma. And so because that has been the heart of my ministry and part of my why, I had to study various tools to bring people back, including myself, because the pain, when you absorb the pain of other people, you've got to find a way to be resilient yourself. So that's why I'm a mindfulness meditation teacher. I practice yoga. I've learned something about the power of the nap with the nap ministry. I've learned about rest. I've learned different ways to heal myself. And I wish I had learned that lesson earlier in my ministry, because I was one of those people thinking I didn't need rest, I didn't need anything. And yet this journey that I've been on, this current couple of years of creative disruption, forced me to stop running around trying to save everybody else and focusing on saving myself, because I was not well. At the point of me being terminated from the Greater Hartford Arts Council, I'm now thankful, because I was near death. My blood pressure was out of whack. My blood sugar was out of whack. I was bleeding behind my eyes. That's how profound the stress was, working in that environment of desperation and a model that was not working. It would have killed me had I not been fired. Soon after me being terminated, then I find out from my doctor that my kidneys were even failing. Thanks be to God, I'm now in normal range for everything, because I had to have time to lay down, to cry, and to heal. And that's the power of resilience, because now I'm back stronger than I ever was.
Yes. Yes. And thank you all so much for sharing that, because I think that, in this work, sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves because we're so busy trying to save everyone else. But as they tell us on the airplane, put your own oxygen mask on first.
Right.
But it's hard when you have a heart for the people, you have a heart for the work, to remember that you also have to take care of yourself. Resilience strengthens us, but we must also tend to what's sacred. And that brings us to our next pillar, which is stewardship. So we're going to bring up our next group, and we have Reverend Brown coming back to the stage. We have Jill, and we have Bishop Selders, who we have not heard from yet. So stewardship, our fourth pillar, is more than just managing resources. It's caring for what's sacred in people and purpose. So Reverend Brown, we'll start with you. How do you define stewardship as care, not just of resources, but of community and calling?
Wonderful, wonderful. I look at this as three pillars. There's the stewardship of people, of course, because people are sacred. Whenever I'm on social media platforms, I greet everyone with the term "beautiful souls," because that's how God sees us. And if I'm going to be worth my salt, I need to make sure that I steward people, that I let people know just how important they are, that God still loves them. I think that in the world that we live in today, so many people are feeling left behind and disenfranchised in so many ways. And then there's the stewardship of ministry. You know, ministry is not about control, but it's about alignment to ensure that every action in our programs and decisions that they reflect the purpose of God. And I think that's where we need to get back to, that when we're going to do ministries, they need to reflect God. And then the last thing is what I've really been getting into lately, especially over the last 3 to 5 years since being here at the 224, and getting into the arts and culture. And I'm seeing that arts and culture are an expression of God's divine creativity. I'm blown away at times at all of the gifts that are here in the city of Hartford, how people are able to take their imagination and put it on a canvas, or make these sculptures and do this. And then with the other creatives that come in the building that are teaching children how to do hip hop and do ballet and do the Zumba and yoga. And so all of that just blows me away. And so I know that I have a great opportunity to make sure that I show God that he did not choose the wrong person as far as stewarding these 3 pillars that he has laid in my life.
Wonderful. And it does take a special soul to steward creativity without stifling it. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Jill, you often talk about creating with integrity. How does beauty become an act of stewardship?
Wow. And, let me just say that I really connected with what Reverend Brown said about, referring to each other as beautiful souls.
Yeah.
Because I believe that beauty is one of God's purest languages. And that's because beauty reflects harmony and truth and order. So when we create with integrity, beauty becomes more than something to look at. It becomes a responsibility. Beauty is actually how we honor life itself. So as a longtime interior designer and as founder of the J. Dorian, the agency, I see beauty as stewardship. It's the conscious act of shaping environments or messages or movements that lift the human spirit. So whether I'm designing a space or helping a speaker find their voice, I always ask the same question: does this bring more light into the world? Mm-hmm. So, and if the answer is yes, then we know we can proceed. And if it's no, we need to stop and halt and think about it, right? True beauty isn't about perfection. And I think that's something that we tend to confuse. It's not about perfection. It's about alignment, just like what Reverend Brown just said. And so when we build on the out, it's when we build from the inside, and it's reflected on the outside. And that's when it's in its truest form, right? That's integrity. And when beauty grows from the kind of honesty and purpose, it stops being about us and it starts serving others. Everything we create, a business, a book, a message, it carries energy. So it can either deplete other people or it can uplift them. So stewardship means choosing to create what heals and what lasts and what honors the divine design of life itself. So when we create with integrity, let me just say this: beauty is like a sacred trust, right? So when we create with integrity, we don't just make things that are beautiful, we make things that matter. And I believe that that's the highest form of leadership.
I love that. I love that. And the word that kept coming to mind when you were speaking was intentionality, that we're
Yeah.
intentional about who we are and what we create and how it impacts others. And I think that
Ex-
if we would all just be a little bit more intentional about our interactions and our creativity, then we would bring more light into the world. So thank you so much for that. Bishop Selders, you've been a steward of justice for decades. How do you keep your spirit strong while leading movements of change?
Lord have mercy. I don't know. It's by the grace of God. Listen,
Amen.
you all got me turned up a little bit. That's one of them justice movement terms. Listen, I think about this notion of stewardship linked to the faith work and the justice work that we do. Part of my family, it comes from one of the Methodist traditions. I know I got a couple of Methodists I'm surrounded by a couple of Methodists around here. And so there's a role in the life of one of these Methodist traditions. They call the role in the ministry the steward. In fact, it's a board of stewards. And in particular, my mother was the pastor's steward. Steward, but black people put D, we replaced the D with a T. So stewards. Um, And what I learned about the role of the steward that I want to lift in this context is the person who is designated to care about the pastor. And that meant the pastor's family, right? Care. What did it mean to look and see and to care about the things we don't ordinarily bring our lenses and our focus to? I'm appreciative of what my colleagues have said in this context because for me, the steward brings this notion of care that's related to accountability that then for me feeds everything what you just asked me. How do I stay involved? Is because I care. So I do a little self-care and then I come back to it. I breathe and there just is no rest for the weary because that care is encompassing of the whole of us. Yes,
Yes.
our divine selves, absolutely our faithful selves, but also ourselves in the world. That means the places and spaces where we're not so caring, the spaces and places where we're not so given to doing and living what is right, true, and honest. Whatsoever things, if I could preach a minute, whatsoever things are, lovely, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are of good report, let's just not think on it. Let's act on it. Let's do these things. So I hope that answers your question. At least that's
It
what I'm turned
absolutely
up about.
It absolutely does. And we love that you're turned up because we're turned up too. So thank you so much for that. And for the reminder that stewardship roots us in care and that care allows creativity to reach beyond borders. So thank you all so much. Our next pillar, our fifth pillar, is cultural reach. How creativity reaches across boundaries, connecting people across culture, story, and soul. So, Bishop, we're going to keep you with us and we're going to bring up a couple of other people. So, we have Richard coming back, our creative genius, and Andre. We get you guys on here. So, Richard, how does technology expand creative and spiritual influence globally?
Well, I had to pause because when you get a bunch of preachers together, um,
Right?
I started I started to act up, but that's not my role here today. Uh, woo! So, what was the question again?
Right? How does technology expand creative and spiritual influence globally?
Um, so I look at technology the same way I look at a microphone. It doesn't give you a voice, but it amplifies the one that you have. And so, from my perspective, technology is just infrastructure, and it's the infrastructure of what we call modern influence. It's how we take revelation and scale it to reach. So it's how we turn, what I tell people, how we turn a moment into momentum. And when I teach in my whiteboard sessions and in my masterminds, I teach something I call the attention code. And right now we're living in an era where attention is the currency, right? But let me take you a little step further. Attention is not just currency monetarily, but it's the currency of impact. If we look at where we are today being election day, we find that the person who controls the narrative controls the story, and the one who controls the story is now the one who's controlling the power. Let me take that back. Narrative, the impact and the power is based on the story that you tell. And so when I tell this, when I talk about this, I start talking about thinking of yourself as a media company. In other words, I don't post on social media, I program social media. I don't post in marketing, I program what the narrative is going to be and how I want the experience to be. And when you start thinking like a media company, you also start thinking of yourselves in ecosystems. It's not just about where you land on the beach. I tell folks all the time, I don't care where you land on the beach, I own the whole beach. I just need you to get there. And so when you're looking at how technology moves in yourself, in your business, in your artwork, it is all about what are the next steps I want people to do and how do I get them into that ecosystem. And the beauty of technology is that it democratizes what you're doing, the creativity and the calling. I'm in Charlotte. I can have an idea and have that idea in South Africa before I finish my cup of coffee. When we look at AI and artificial intelligence and how fast the technology is moving right now, I told my mentor in AI, I said, "You've made me so much money because now I can create at the speed of thought."
Yeah.
Now I'm in a place where I'm not the clog in the pipe. Can I preach it? That Dr. Best. In the last 3 months, Dr. Best has embraced technology in a way that allows her to do her own videos, which a year ago or even 6 months ago would have been $10,000 and multiple days to get done. And now she's dropping 2 and 3 videos a day. That is what technology does. It allows you to amplify the voice that you have and amplify the stories that you have.
Wow, I love that. And I'm in Charlotte too, so we're definitely going to have to grab a cup of coffee
Oh,
as
that's
we work on
good.
amplifying our message across the globe. So I love that. And I do encourage, especially people who are creatives, to embrace using AI. It doesn't stifle your creativity, but it can definitely work to enhance it. Bishop, we're coming back to you. You've united people from every background. How do art and activism help bridge those differences and build unity?
Very interesting question. I don't know too much of anything. This is what I do know, however. Um, this is God's honest truth. We were gifted some language that I think is related to this, interestingly enough, from the Johnson brothers. Lift every voice and sing. Till earth
Mm,
and heaven ring. Ring with the harmony of liberty, huh? Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky, right? Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. I love this part. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark has what called sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun. That's a Muslim thing. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on until victory is won. For me, this whole idea of cultural reach is about singing a song, right? The metaphor for me, I love what brother just said. It's about how do we grab it, how do we lean into whatever it is that we do, and allow voices to sing, because that's where our liberty is, that's where our freedom is, and that's where we got to be. And this cultural moment, this global moment is calling for us to sing some songs.
yes, I love that. I love that. And we can all sing and from our different perspectives. Some of us are altos, some of us are sopranos, and people like me, we're lip syncers. Like we all have a role to play in singing those songs.
Listen, there's a
Uh,
whole show that it's about lip syncing. How you can
yes,
perform and lip sync. That's a whole thing. So I'm with you.
that's my show. That's my show.
And the good thing, Lakeisha, is that now with AI, you have the ability to sing and create songs, even when you don't have that voice for it. That
Yes.
again is how we've democratized what we're doing. And I'm gonna jump off real quick. My wife the other day had a song in her head that she's had for 25 to 30 years. Now we're all musicians in the house. I have 5 boys. We're all musicians. She's never come to us and said, "Hey, can you help me with this song?" She started singing the song. I said, "Wait a minute, let's put this on a voice recorder." She wrote it into a voice memo. I uploaded it into one of my music AI systems. She now has a song that's been in her heart for 25 years. That is what
Wow.
technology is doing for us today.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Andre, you teach history through story. How do you use storytelling to connect generations and cultures? Uh-oh, we can't hear you.
Lakeisha, that was the
There you
best one.
go.
You lip sync. I think that was hilarious. That was really good. So part of what I like to do to bridge gaps between generations is to inject humor, because people want to laugh. Sometimes we
Yeah.
want to laugh to keep from crying. But I walk into the room with the connection that's already been made, because I walk into the room with my ancestors on my back.
Mm.
I'm actually on their back, and I'm walking in and they're there. So this connection has already begun even before I got into the door. And then I remember the stories my grandmother told me. And then I tell those stories. I think that's one of our key instruments and tools today, is to keep telling the story, keep telling our stories, whether the folks want to hear them or not, because a lot of times we have so much competition with these kids today between their electronic devices and other musical endeavors, sports endeavors. Keep telling them the stories, whether they want to hear them or not, because something you say in that story is going to catch their ear. Or tell them the stories where they can hear them. Tell them on an electric device. Take them to a movie. Talk to this brother here with the electronics. Hey, do it AI. Do whatever you want to do and how you can do it. Meet folks where they're at, but keep telling the story.
I
Wonderful.
wanted to
Wonderful.
interject there. One of the
Yeah.
things that I lift up for people is, if you have a platform, whatever your platform is, we are living in times where we've got to get the message of positivity out. So I'm saying, if you have a platform, don't just waste your platform shaking your groove thing and shaking your hoo-has. Get out there with a good word. You've got to say something. Teach, give the message, give inspiration, help give people direction, because as we can see, the news system is changing. And so we've got to go back to the way it was, in that people used art as a way to deliver messages. So when we think about the quilts of old, a quilt could be hanging on the line, but it gives you a map of how to get to freedom. When we think about the paintings or the songs, we know that there were songs, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. It
Talk
wasn't
about it.
about a chariot, it was art as a guide for
Talk
your
about it.
freedom. And so we're in times right now where we need art as a guide for freedom. So if you're on TikTok, if you're on Facebook, use art as a guide towards freedom. Inspire people, give them a direction, give them the news, give them the information they don't have. Books are being banned, books are being torn out of libraries. So we're back to needing storytellers again, who are going to give us the history that books don't have anymore. The griots were honored people in society because they held the stories that the world wanted to erase. So
Talk about
creative disruption is not new, it's what's been going on. So I just want
Yes.
you talk about old time religion. I'm talking about all those old stories that, just they were telling us a long time ago what to say and what to do. Apparently we need to go back to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I just want to thank everyone for participating today. We celebrate you, Dr. Best, for this work that you have curated and
Yes,
cannot wait to dig
congratulations.
into the book a little bit further. You've given us a synopsis of what is to come, so cannot wait to dig more into it. So as we go into our oh, you're popping everybody up. We've explored the 5 pillars today of creative disruption: belonging, imagination, resilience, stewardship, and cultural reach. Now, I would like for you, Dr. Best, to give us your final reflection.
Well, I want to thank each of you so much for being here with me today and for being with me on the course of this journey of creative disruption. God gave me the assignment, God dropped it in my spirit, and the preachers understand. God will give you a seed of a message, drops in like a scripture or a picture or a story or a title. And when God drops it in your spirit, you know it's an assignment. So over 2 years ago, God dropped this in my spirit. It lit something up, and I knew it was an assignment. So I held on to it. And in the midst of holding on to it, my whole life blew up. Even by saying the word creative disruption, it was enough to make a former supervisor of mine be very uncomfortable with even the term, thinking I was going to do something harsh or rash. But we're in times where the activists and the advocates need to speak up because so many people are growing silent out of fear, out of concern, and rightfully so. But some of us need to be brave and some of us need to have courage because when we think about the world that we have been in, so many people have experienced oppression and suffering, and somebody had to have enough courage to say something. And so I recognize that that's my call, creative disruption right now, and it will continue on. It's something that it's not just about the book, it's about opening the door to the movement itself. And so we just want you to know that we're here as a community. We want to connect as a community, and you have a chance to participate in the creative disruption movement. So I'll turn things back over to Lakeisha with our final points, but I'm so thankful for each of you for journeying with us, for being encouragers, for being a part of this, and help to bring creative disruption to your community. We want to spread this around the world. We expect to be around the world. We're talking to artists and activists everywhere. So we're here. We want to make it happen. And we look forward to seeing what God will do with all of this.
Awesome. Go ahead. Somebody about to say something? No. Okay. So thank you to everyone who joined us on this election day. Remember, your vote, your art, your imagination, and sacred arts are sacred acts of freedom. Let's use them to build the world we dreamed of. And now you all can get involved and become a part of this movement. First, by buying Creative Disruption on Amazon. It is for sale, it is live. So make sure you get your copy. Dr. Best is going to drop the link in the chat as well. Leave a review and share it with 10 friends. So let's help spread the word. Let's really make this a movement. And then finally, you can invite Dr. Best to bring creative disruption to your city in 2026. She'll help you to gather creatives from different sectors, whether it's the arts, whether it's music, entertainment, so that you all can have a conversation about how to be better creative disruptors in your area. Because with the midterm elections coming up, we need some good trouble to happen in our cities. So, because change begins with creativity, and creativity begins with you. Belong deeply, rise boldly, and disrupt to create. Thank you all so much for being a part of Creative Disruption Live.